talk, but we don't know whether we are being impactful, whether we're making sense, whether we're conveying meaning, whether we're getting across to the other person. So today I've got with us Mira Swarup. She's a leading impact communication, executive presence coach and speaker. We're going to talk about the secrets of how to be engaging and how to connect with anyone, especially as we move back to physical settings while we're still dealing with the virtual environment. So we've got these two different environments. A lot of us, even me, I think I've lost my understanding of how to actually deal with people physically. So I feel like I'm learning a new skill. We're going to address the nervousness that we may also feel in a lot of the social settings. The three takeaways that we are hoping that you will all get is you're going to learn how to present yourself in social and business situations, how to connect with anyone, and how to be engaging. So Mira is an army child who uses the charm of the olive greens to help people create an impactful first impression that lasts. 9 years ago, she discovered her passion for personifying people, and since then has held workshops on executive presence, likability, and difficult conversations. Her clients include BCG, KPMG, Coca Cola, and eBay, some of these small companies that you may have heard of. So Mira, very, very warm welcome. How are you today?
So Kirti, thank you so much. Feeling wonderful and so elated by your introduction.
Well, Mira, before we get started, I want to ask you why this topic and why do we talk so much about communication?
We could talk gallons about communication. But today, the intention is, while we are taking this slow, gradual effort to come back to meeting people more and more in person, offices are opening up, we're socially opening up, we're taking more revengeful holidays, our social interactions are now going to go to the next level. It's not a skill that one forgets, but it's lovely to see how can we reconnect with people more meaningfully. How can those connections that we now create post-pandemic have a deeper sense and people feel even more compelled to want to come back and connect with you? It's a skill set that can be worked on, and in conversation with you, it started to become clear. This is the perfect time to bring it up. Yeah.
Awesome. So tell us, Mira, you coach so many people. What is one of the biggest issues that you see that people face?
One of the biggest issues that I notice people face is this usual debate of, hey, I'm an introvert. If there's an agenda-based conversation, I'm okay to have it. But the minute it's like just talking left, right, center about everything and anything, I'm not okay. I mean, if they're going to talk about their game of golf, which I have no interest in, I don't know how to stay engaged there. And then I try to shy away from that conversation. So sometimes they're introverts because they think they don't have the potential to carry that conversation forward. Or sometimes it's out of interest, like they don't want to step into it. It's almost an experience that I'm above this. And those situations make the interaction even more awkward and difficult to sustain as relationships.
Saloni says, I can relate with that and would love to hear from the rest of you that can relate to this, because I think a lot of times we find ourselves, especially if it's a topic that's not interesting to us or a topic that's getting heated, we tend to run away. Like politics is big one, you're like, these days you don't even know whether you should be discussing it or not.
Absolutely. It becomes quite a taboo subject. And then you're wondering, okay, I was told not to start it, but it's happened. Now what do I do? So I get.
So Mira, tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got into this line before I turn it over to you.
So sweet. Okay. So Kirti, I love doing this. This is my time to shine a little more than you have already.
Exactly.
So Kirti was very kind and she said, I'm an army child. But let me say, I call myself an army brat. And brat literally because I feel like that.
Okay, Mira, hold that thought. How many army brats in the audience?
Yeah, give it to us in the chat box. How many army brats in the room right now? Is that a yes from Vidya and Karishma, or was that a meeting for something else?
I think they're relating to your earlier comment.
I got that. So if there are army brats or defense or naval brats, anybody in the defense?
Just a brat.
Yeah. Akanksha says not a brat, but a wife. I totally get you, Akanksha. Thank you for acknowledging that. I get that space you come from. And I can imagine that you might be managing brats somewhere. So that could be it. But as people are catching on, got you, Vidya. Yes. I call myself an army brat because my father was in the army and my grandparents were in the army. So if I had either joined, been commissioned into the army, or married into the army, I would be third generation. And for whatever reasons, that path did not happen. Yet the army left a beautiful imprint on me. And that's something I'd love to share with people. Of course, while I was going on my journey, I did my bachelor's in biotechnology, master's in clinical research. I've experimented a lot with humans while I was in clinical research. I worked on asthma, clinical trials for oncology, diabetes, and many other areas. Another 5 years, I was heading the operations of a healthcare company. While this pharmaceutical journey has been very enriching, little did I know that my career that I do today would be so related to my experience as an army brat. I say that because I got a chance to literally see. A lot of us carry this image when we see very well turned out people, the ones who look like Bond, or the ones who just know how to carry themselves. And they're like, oh, they were just born with it. And that disposes of any opportunity for us to consider, maybe not. I got a chance in the army to really see a girl join the fraternity, a boy join the fraternity, whether they were born in it or whether they joined as a commissioned person or married. I saw them join, and then over a period of time, I saw them transform from a girl to a lady, from a boy to a gentleman. And that transition that I saw was like, hey, no one's born with it. This can be worked on, provided are you willing. And that transformation, if I may share, is not like a temporary change. Like a caterpillar transforms to a butterfly, it doesn't change back. So that transformation is what significantly contributed to who I am today. And it's an absolute opportunity to help professionals gain impact and influence in rooms that matter by shifting the way they communicate and present themselves. Yeah.
Awesome. But I also want to tell people that not only for professionals, you do amazing sessions, even for homemakers, for everyone that needs to communicate better.
Thank you. It's always an honor.
Thank you, Mira. Now over to you. I know everybody would love to get started.
Wonderful. Thank you. So warm welcome to all the participants here. Thank you for taking out the time to be here. I truly respect this because you could have been anywhere in this moment. Literally, you could have logged into another channel. You could be watching Netflix. You could have been in an office meeting, or you could have just been sitting back, sipping your chai, which you can do even right now on this call. I am so glad that you took the time to be here. It means a lot to me. While you're here, my intention is to have you start to pick up on certain principles that allow human interactions to be more meaningful and go deeper. Why? Because as we're stepping out, each interaction you have is building a way forward for a future opportunity. We may not see it, but the way we interact with our neighbor, or the way we interact with somebody socially, or even at work, each of those interactions is building a path forward for us. The more present we are in those interactions, the more opportunities open up. So with that said, knowing that the topic for today is how do we engage more meaningfully? How do we create that connection with people? I'd like to let you know that the principle we're going to speak about is how you manage your presence, how you come across to people with respect to your presentation. But much deeper word that I'm using here is presence. I wish I could speak a lot more about it. But to simplify this for you, the way you present yourself in front of people helps you do perception management, and to tangibly understand how you could perceive, how you could manage those perceptions, I'd like to give you this beautiful model. So please stay with me while I share my slides with you. So Kirti, could you give me a thumbs up if you can see my slides? Awesome. All right. So I'm going to take you through a certain set of essentials that will help you understand the critical things to look after when you are in your interactions that matter. The first thing anybody would notice about you in your physical presence, whenever you're in front of them, within the first 5 to 10 seconds, the person will notice your physical attributes. So by physical attributes, that's literally your body language, your attire, and your grooming. So your grooming looks like your hair is done, you're shaved, and you appear like you didn't just get out of bed, but you bothered to present yourself meaningfully. Your attire also adds to that. We're going to spend some time talking about your physical presence, especially when it's about your body language. And there's a wonderful story I'll share about it. But what we want to know, even in advance, is your physical presence is so powerfully influencing the other person, where within first 5 to 10 seconds, this is research speaking, within the first 5 to 10 seconds, people make 55% of their impression about you. Now, let me give you an example of what that impression sounds like. No one may be thinking this consciously, but the words or the thoughts that run through their mind is, this is how educationally qualified this person must be. This is the kind of job this person may be doing. This is about how much this person gets paid. This is their family background. This is their social status, etc., etc. These thoughts don't sound very comforting. It sounds like that's a lot of judgment happening from the other side. And you may think that, hey, but I don't do this. So what are you talking about? So I'm with you. I'm going to stand right next to you and say, yeah, there's a good chance you don't do any of this. Beautiful chance. And may you come across many who don't judge you by your physical appearance, like don't judge a book by its cover. Yet, would you be willing to see that majority of the human interactions that you undergo, you would have people be judging you on your physical presence?
Mira, should we take a pause and ask this question also to the audience? Because I would love for them to, because you and I were on screen. Most people have not had their screens on. So people that are willing to be honest, did they make a judgment about us? You don't have to tell us what the judgment was. It could be good or bad. Would love to know. Was there a thought that went into your head?
Yeah, that'd be lovely. Let's hear from you. Was there any opinion, view? Judgment sounds very strong. What is the immediate feeling?
Anything that came to mind, anything that something came to your mind.
Yeah. Thanks, Chatra, for saying that. This is useful for us to know that you experienced it. Oh, Christelle, that's very heartwarming. I'm going to take it very positively. Yes. Yes.
I think we'll continue, and I'm hoping that the responses keep coming in. As Akansha also says, yes, she did. Yes, it felt like I judged myself more than anyone else. Interesting. Interesting.
Wow, that's interesting, Vidya. I'm glad that you had the awareness to catch yourself. Got it, Vandana. Got it, Vandana. Super, Indranil. Thank you for joining. And I'm glad that you were sensing more than judging. One of those really enlightened souls among us. Thank you. While we're talking about this, again, I'd like to bring your attention to this. As much as we may be walking into a space of awareness where we are beyond judging, we want to interact with people for a more meaningful connection, we want to also be aware that when we're working with people who matter for us, they're stakeholders, they may not necessarily have walked the same journey of awareness. And yet you may want to hold a relationship with them. So can we be okay that there is a judgment happening? And can we not judge them for judging? Because that's just making it really worse. So my invitation to you, let's be willing to bring that on. Yeah. So your physical presence is certainly very essential. How we dress, how we use our body language. I'll be covering certain aspects of that play a significant role in our interactions. Then the second thing that plays a significant role is our social interactions. So when we talk about social, yes, that does refer to how you show up on social media, because that again helps people form an opinion of you. But that's not the only thing here. When I'm talking about social presence, I'm talking about how you show up in a conversation. How do you introduce yourself? How do you talk about what you do? How do you reflect back to people when you understand what they are saying or what they are sharing about themselves? How do you engage with them? How do you keep that conversation going? How do you connect two people to each other? How do you network? How do you allow two people to profit from a connection with you having no stake in it? All of that is your social interactions, your social presence. Your social presence also at a much relatively advanced level is your ability to persuade, your ability to negotiate, your ability to influence. So a combination of physical and social play a huge role in a very enigmatic presence. Now, physical and social is good. And I'm going to ask a question to the audience. There is a third part of this triangle without which the first two are of no use. Now, I'm letting you know the third part is not your intellectual skill. When we are having this conversation around being able to have powerful interactions, for me, it is given that you're fantastic at your skill. You're good at what you do. And this is not a question of your intellectual ability or your skill set. So keeping that aside, what is the third part of this triangle without which the first two are of no use? Curious to know, what is the audience thinking? Can we hear from you in the chat box? Self-awareness, Trisha, thank you. That's a lovely experience. Mental communication. Communication is social, Chatra, so thanks for that. Behavioral, Vinay, got it. Saloni is like, what's your intention? And Sukirti says, what you say, got it. Mentality, how a person thinks. I completely get that, Shruti. So Amita says personality. Your personality is a significant aspect of your physical and social. Loving it. Thank you. Janet and Christelle, you used the word emotion. Trisha said emotional quotient. Fantastic. Body language is a part of physical. Akanksha says presence and how we perceive ourselves. Smita, that's awareness. That's wonderful. Amita says feelings. Okay, so each one of you who contributed to the chat box right now, give yourself a good pat on the back, because it's fantastic that you thought this far. And I'd like to share with you, most of your answers are right. When you're saying behavior, mental awareness, you're talking about emotions, you're talking about feelings, you're talking about how we perceive ourselves. So I want to give this to you. The word that I'm really looking for is your emotional presence. And emotional presence, if I could help define for you, is awareness of two areas. One, at any point in time, being able to clearly identify what we are feeling, and therefore being able to manage it. And the second part of your emotional presence is being able to identify what the other person is feeling, and therefore being able to manage that in that interaction. So emotional presence is an ongoing journey. It's something that we're all working to create a beautiful semblance of as we go forward. Physical, social, we work on ourselves. If we begin to master it well, when we focus ourselves on it. Emotional, in my experience, is a long journey. The best example that I could give of emotional presence, give me a yes in the chat box if you've seen the movie Three Idiots. Got it. Sukirti's already got a thumbs up going, right? Yeah. It's like, yeah. Are you kidding? Is this even a question? Of course, I've seen the movie Three Idiots, right? So there's this fantastic scene where Kareena Kapoor is being advised by Amir Khan in their respective characters. And Amir Khan literally pats on her back. It's the first time he's meeting, and he says, I'm going to give you some unsolicited advice. Please don't get married to this man. He is a price tag. And he said, let me show you a demo. And there's this beautiful chutney scene where he deliberately has chutney fall on the fiance's shoes. His name is Suhas. And how he reacts in that moment immediately gives awareness on how unstable this person's emotions are. And when we can start to see that Suhas the presentation that Suhas had, where his physical presence was like a 9 on 10, his social skills in that event when he was at that wedding were also probably like an 8 on 10, where he was very interactive with people. First impression was beautiful. But the minute something destabilizes the person, how does the person react? How do all the emotions pour out? Is a measure of the emotional stability the person has. And that allows us to then start to see, when I interact with people outside, do I feel troubled by anything they said? Do I tend to immediately negate their own feelings? Somebody started to talk about an opinion they have on something. And if I have a different opinion, how do I have that interaction without triggering the person further? All of these are signs of emotional turbulence within that doesn't allow a very meaningful interaction to happen outside. So, intending that in today's session, we're able to cover certain aspects of physical, social, and emotional while we're going through. All right. So, without delay, I'm going to jump on to the next slide. Let's quickly talk about body language. And while we talk about body language, the first thing that I want to share with you is in the 1960s, this is a US based story. In the 1960s, there was a presidential debate between Kennedy and Nixon. And this was also the year that televisions had just started to come. So half of US had televisions and half of US did not. Because televisions had just started to come, there was an initiative that, oh, all right, this year, let's have the presidential debate not just be aired on radio, but also on television. And so literally half the nation watched the debate and half the nation heard the debate. Would you believe that the result, pre-results, were that the part of the nation that heard the debate said Nixon would win. And the part of the nation that watched the debate said Kennedy would win. That's how divided the country was. And this is just not about Republicans and Democrats. The results when they came out was that year Kennedy won. And when that happened, Nixon realized this and he said it. There's an interview captured where he says, I wish I had known that a picture was worth 1,000 words. You know, if a picture is worth 1,000 words, a video is probably 1,000,000. And that awareness that happened in the audience, this is a beautiful case study that went in where people started to see, oh my God, the amount of impression and the influence that gets created by just watching a person versus listening to the person. And when both are combined, the watching takes over so much more in addition to the listening. So this is just an example. And of course, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but one quick look at how their body language gave away. How you notice Kennedy on the left, very composed style of sitting with legs crossed together, hands over there. I'm not showing you the video, but this is literally the posture that Kennedy maintained through and through the debate. And when it was Nixon was shuffling a lot. His hands literally moved 3 times under 30 seconds. And if you notice the way his feet are placed, where one foot is right under the chair, the other one outside, this literally demonstrates, I'm so uncomfortable here right now. I wish I could just flee the room. I'm giving you the gossip behind this. Kennedy was actually trained for 2 weeks before he showed up on camera. He was trained to be media ready. Nixon wasn't. It was a choice. And little did they know that this focus on a skill set could make such a significant difference to the outcome. So while we're talking about this, let me brief this even more. When we talk about body language, my purpose here is, how can I simplify it for you? How can you make it more easy to digest versus always second guessing? Is this right? Is this not? How am I supposed to be? Let me simplify this for you. Your body language at any point in time is literally 3 things. It's very simple for you to remember. First, it's what are you doing with your eyes and your facial gestures, literally just this portion. Second, what are you doing with your hands? And third, what are you doing with your posture? Your posture is when you're sitting, standing, walking, all of that is included in your posture. So when you can segregate your body language into these 3 aspects, it's easier for you to manage yourself as well as understand what I might be doing right or what I might want to shift. In your social interactions, now that you're coming face to face and it's going beyond these screens that we're meeting people on, what I would love for you to know is your eye contact is going to be your superpower. provided you use it right. How? The first thing I'd like to tell you is your eye contact, when done right, has the ability to generate oxytocin for the other person. Oxytocin is this wonderful hormone that gets secreted in various situations. But when you make eye contact with people in an appropriate manner, oxytocin is a hormone that instills or compels the other person to want to trust you. Now, trust is a very debatable subject. Trust often happens when somebody has already seen you in action, has seen performance, can take value from what you have shared, and therefore trust gets established. But there's something that can happen even before, where at least the person would be willing to give you a chance to start to trust you. And that willingness that comes up happens because of oxytocin. So please know that you have this ability, like Dr. Strange, to be able to make others feel something for you. And that can happen with the right kind of eye contact. So let me share with you, there are 3 kinds of eye contacts that usually happen. The first kind of eye contact that I want to talk about is called the power gaze, where when we are meeting a person face to face, if we are focusing literally between their eyes and their forehead. Yes, exactly, a triangle formed right here. Now, when we're focusing in this section, this does not create oxytocin. Yet, you could consider doing this power gaze when you are talking something that requires a very transactional piece of attention. For instance, you're taking people through a piece of report that you'd like them to work on. You're taking them through a presentation, which is going to help your stakeholder with something. You're in an interaction where you're literally talking numbers, business, data. It's an interaction that is meant to help develop your relationship with the stakeholder at the transactional level.
Mira, would this work online also if I was looking at you at that? Like right now, I'm looking right there. Is it working?
Sukriti, I wish I could say that is true, but there's a hack to do it online, and I will share it with you just now. When we do power gazing, this will happen in person, but when we are virtually presenting ourselves, as you will notice, there are many times when I'm looking directly into the camera while I'm communicating. So when I'm looking into the camera, you get this experience that I'm talking directly to you. And this is the experience where you may start to secrete oxytocin, liking the experience that you're getting all the attention and therefore forming a stronger connection. But now when I'm not looking at the camera, I'm looking at my slides, there is a slight disconnect, nothing to be very significant about, which tends to happen when we're presenting virtually. But knowing that in some interactions, when you're trying to drive a point forward, look into the camera. And then in other cases, you can look here, there, everywhere. Does that help?
Anybody trying it? Anybody trying right to look in the camera? It's not so easy, especially in Zoom, because sometimes the person is not actually directly in the center, so it requires a lot of skill to keep your focus looking at the camera. Because right now, Mira is on my right-hand side and I want to look this way. So to look at her straight, it requires skill.
Yes, it certainly does. So talking about our face-to-face interactions and how power gazing is something that you want to maintain when you're taking somebody through a business plan, something that demonstrates your intellectual awareness on a subject that allows other people to leverage your skill set, that's when you maintain power gazing. Power gazing, when done too much, can sometimes unsettle people and they may not always feel connected with you, which is why I'm inviting you to now know about the second form of gazing, which is social gazing. Now, social gazing is the kind of gazing you want to do when you want to have a deeper connection with the person. It's beyond the transactional conversations. It's beyond just business. It's like you really want to know the person more. And then you notice those moments when there's small talk happening, or there is, hey, just catching up, how are things going for you, is when I invite you to do social gazing, where your focus is on their eyes and the area till their lips. This is where oxytocin is happening. This is where that meaningful connection is getting driven even more so. So leverage this when you want the conversation to be more warm. and leverage the power gazing when you want to demonstrate your competence. On another subject, later, I might be presenting on what does it take to build charisma. And charisma often is a combination of how warm you come across, as well as the balance with your competence being demonstrated. So your social gazing allows the warmth, your power gazing allows your competence to reflect, and a balance of that can be managed. For reference, intimate gazing, when you may have interest in the other side, or the other person may have interest, it could be vice versa, you may notice that this form of gazing is happening. So there might be moments where you might have felt a little creeped out and you're not really sure of what's happened. There's a good chance the other person is giving you an intimate gaze and you're not very happy receiving it. So in that case, of course, you can choose to not make eye contact at all, and you could look away. In fact, a beautiful way to respond to somebody like that is to do sheer power gazing with them, because that could make them back off and feel very unsettled. So that's a way to do this. That's the three kinds of gazing: power of eye contact. Very quickly, Sukirti.
So there's a question that's come that Sunaina is asking. Mira, you often look down while speaking. In this session, you also look sideways. Is that okay when we are in a face-to-face interaction?
She makes a very good point. The reason I'm looking sideways is because as a speaker, I love to see faces. And when I'm looking sideways, I have Sukirti's face there. So I'm speaking to her right now. So yes, this is certainly something as a tool you use. It's more like a reflection that you're getting in that moment. And then there are times when I have no audience with whom I can make any form of eye contact or see them on the screen. That's when I consciously look at the camera and I feel like I'm talking to an audience out there and I give all my attention there. So I'm inviting you to tweak it basis what you're comfortable with. There are many times you will see me looking into the camera because there is a particular point that I'm stressing on and I would want to bring your attention there. And most other times I might be looking at the slides or looking at the speaker, just like how it would happen in a natural auditorium when a speaker is speaking. They're not making eye contact with you all the time. They're looking at different faces at different points in time. So that's the balance we create in a conversation. I hope that was helpful.
One more question before we move on. Crystal is asking, I often look at people's mouth when they're speaking.
So you're doing the social gaze, and that's perfectly fine, Crystal. If it works for you, go ahead. I invite you to consider practicing power gazing when you're talking about your skill set or demonstrating a competence in an area. I invite you to try power gazing.
Now, a lot of us, and this is a cultural thing, Mira, are afraid to look somebody in the eye. When we're talking, we want to be like this. Can you reflect on that too?
You make a good point, Sukirti. And in our culture, I feel it's still more tolerable for us to make eye contact. I've seen a lot of reservation, mostly in East Asia, where people don't make eye contact, and it's completely understandable. My invitation to you is, in most corporate setups, our culture is very open. And in most corporate setups, I invite you to keep a balance of 20-80. So 80% keep eye contact with the person, 20% look here, there, everywhere. In a social interaction where it's not corporate involved, it may not necessarily be as open a culture. It may be a family gathering. There, I invite you to bring it to a 50-50. But again, when you're having a conversation with people, and I'll take you through that in just a bit, where the conversation is now starting to touch upon how the person feels and what the person is probably needing. The person may be sharing something very personal. In that case, I invite you to maintain a social gaze where you're really looking at them in the eye, making sure that they experience being heard, and your body language significantly contributes to that. So keep your eye contact, letting the person know, I get you, but maintain the social gaze. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sukirti. Really happy for you helping me with the questions. Very quickly, ladies and gentlemen, your hand gestures, like the second part of your body language, is going to be very useful for you when you're meeting people in person. Just a few examples of body language, how you could enable hand gestures for your conversations. So firstly, why are we focusing so much on hand gestures? I could do this entire presentation by just showing my face to you, talking and sharing, and yet it may not come across as engaging as compared to when I'm using my hands. because you will see an immediate difference in the amount of passion I am exuding while I'm speaking. Whether I'm talking about my work, whether I'm talking about something personal, or I'm even talking about something transactional in nature, the minute I use my hands, I demonstrate how engaged I am with that subject versus treating it like just a passive thing that's happening. That enables you to come across as very charismatic. When people can see you use your hands meaningfully, intentionally, that makes people pay more attention to you. And what do I mean by that? People can immediately see if your body language is not in sync with what you're saying. For instance, if I shared with you, ladies and gentlemen, there is a big problem that we have. Now, you might say, you just said big, but what you're showing is pretty small. So what are you talking about? It's that immediate disconnect that happens because people are looking at your body language and they're trying to sync that with what you're saying. This demonstrates how much your body language is catching people's attention. Now, you can be aware of this signs, choose to not neglect it, and use that to keep people glued to what you're sharing and what you're presenting. Now, let's find ways to do that meaningfully. Mira asked to use her hands, so I'm just going to use my hands, but that's going to be like jazz hands. So I'm giving you an example of how to use your hands meaningfully. 3 ways that I'm sharing with you. 1, you could do some form of listing. So for instance, like I shared with you, your presence is demonstrated by 3 aspects: your physical, your social, your emotional. Or there are 3 types of eye gazes, or there are 2 things that I'd like you to focus on when you're talking about your eye contact. So you see, in conversation, I'm literally bringing up numbers on my fingers. You can literally go all the way to 10 when you are engaging with people. Use your hands to showcase numbers. Another way to do it, it's not listed here, is you could show a division, a separation, like, so if we went with plan A, this is what would happen. If we went with plan B, this is what would happen. So you're immediately showing a divide in this space and saying plan A, plan B. So people stay more engaged and focused with you while you're speaking. Similarly, sizing. So this has a big impact on us versus this is manageable, or, this is something that will just go by. So how we show sizing on our hand demonstrates the impact of what we are speaking. Similarly, whenever you want to demonstrate that something's really important for you, something's holds a lot of meaning to you. Like, for instance, you're talking to someone and like, thank you for asking, or I've had such a lovely time here. When you place your hand to your heart, you're literally demonstrating how moved you are by that interaction or their any kind of value that they might have added. It's a beautiful way to acknowledge other people by putting your hand to your heart and showing how moved you were by that experience. So these are examples of hand gestures. And very quickly talking about posture, because that's the third aspect of your body language. So I could, of course, speak about the typical stuff, and any army person would say this: upright back, pushed back shoulders, fair distance between the legs, keep your power on. But I want to give this to people. Yes, your body language, your posture, all of this matters, what's listed here. A wonderful piece of science that would really interest you is what happens in that interaction with somebody is certainly key, but you could prepare yourself for key interactions even before. What do I mean by that? There's a beautiful science called power body language. There's a wonderful TED talk by Dr. Amy Cuddy, which speaks about how holding a position of power when you are in your private space. So your private space could be your car before you're going for a meeting, or it could be a washroom, it could be your own office, a space that others may not be seeing you, where you hold a power position. Now, what is a power position? A power position is somewhere where you are really expanded in your body. You're not shrunk, you're not holding yourself together, but you're like really spread out and taking as much space as you can. Why am I encouraging you to do this position versus this position? So this is the research that has happened. There were two sets of groups. Repeatedly, the results have shown two sets of groups, Group A and Group B, asked to do a particular task. Before they went out for the task, each of these groups, Group A was asked, hey, could you be in a high power pose? Like, could you please hold your body really far, expanded, spread out, and not shrunk? Yes, exactly like Sukirti is doing right now. And hold it for just 4 minutes. Like they really timed them and said, before you go for the task, can we ask you to hold it for 4 minutes? And they did that. And this is what Group B did, particularly asked them, could you hold yourself together like you're shrunken, you're sitting with your body shrunk like this. And we want you to hold that position for 4 minutes. These groups walk out from those rooms. And the first thing that they asked is, how are you feeling? Most responses from Group A was, I'm feeling pumped, I'm feeling excited, I'm feeling like, let's bring it on. And Group B that walked out said, I feel okay. Yeah, I'm just a little tense about how this will go. Not really sure of how this is going to go. So a lot of uncertainty, a lot of anxiety. And Group A was a lot more pumped. How did they perform? There wasn't a concern of overconfidence. Group A every time performed 40% better than Group B. Each time, every time. The science is when we hold ourselves in a high power position for just 4 minutes, the level of cortisol, which is called the stress hormone, the levels of cortisol tremendously drop, and the testosterone rises, which makes us come into an action mode. Like, I want to take action right now. I want to get things done right now. So this is what enables you to get down to doing something with a very positive mindset. When we hold the low power position, unwantingly and unknowingly, cortisol goes to a whole next level. And testosterone drops, quite the reverse. This impacts how we show up in a conversation. Now, where do you want to use this? If you're going for an interview, if you're going for a sales conversation, if you're going for a conversation where a stakeholder's interaction matters, if you're going to a conversation where you're feeling a little uncertain about how will you handle it, all that uncertainty and awkwardness and anything that you're feeling can be managed better when you hold a high power position. Now, you may ask me, Mira, I don't always have a washroom to get to. I don't know how long does this effect last? How do I practice it if I haven't got a chance to go to a space, closed space? So you could do it for 5 minutes in the morning, and that effect is easily going to last you for another 2.5, 3 hours. That's how powerful this work is. But there is a way where even when you may be sitting in a room where people are walking in and out, how do you hold a power position? My request is no crossing. So avoid crossing your legs in that moment, avoid crossing your arms, avoid touching yourself. Ensure that even if you've got a phone in your hand, you're not looking into the phone all dipped in. You're holding the phone at a position and you're looking through it from a little distance. We tend to peer into our phones because it's a very small screen. So we tend to shrink in front of it. Keep the phone at a distance, look at it like that. This way, you're training yourself to keep an up and alert body. And that itself can be a very powerful way to practice high power pose, as well as carry that same energy into that interaction. So inviting you to try this, inviting you to see the TED Talk by Dr. Amy Cuddy. It's literally the second highest viewed TED Talk that you would come across.
Yes, somebody also asked for the name again, so please do say the name of the TED Talk again. And they want you to stand up and show us the power pose, Mira.
Absolutely, absolutely. I am just gonna do this. I've just put it across to you, Dr. Amy Cuddy. And ladies and gentlemen, this is me doing the Wonder Woman power pose for you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Really loving the energy here. Yes. All right. So we've gone through our body language. We're figuring out our interactions. This is an example of a power pose that you could pull off. Now, before we jump onto the question and answers, this is something I wanted to share with you. How you use your body language is certainly key. Now, let's also dip into how we have those social interactions. Now, social interactions, for the ease of understanding, let me put it into two categories. One is agenda-based conversations, where you're very clear, this is the subject, this is what you're going to talk about, this is probably what is expected, and you prepare accordingly. But many of us who are introverts, or sometimes we call ourselves ambiverts, we can find it very exhausting, challenging to walk into a room and have a non-agenda conversation. So just the idea of going and meeting people socially can give us the shivers. There were many introverts who were literally rejoicing in their rooms like, oh, thank God, I don't have to go interact with people anymore. It is so much easier to just be by myself, hold my cup of coffee and read my book, and I don't want to go interact. So now for all those introverts who are having to re-challenge themselves, I want to share this with you. Your small talk, I'd like to give you a hack or formula that enables it. And then after I've given you the hack, I'm going to allow you to graduate to a deeper conversation. So let me give you the hack first. Your social interactions or your small talk can be beautifully a dance of these four subjects. It's called the Ford formula, where your interactions can be about family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. That sounds a little awkward if you say, tell me about your family, because that may show up as a question in an interview. So how do you meaningfully ask somebody who all is in their family? So this is something that could happen with a colleague that you're meeting after a long time, where you would say, so it's amazing how I've known you for so long, but I've never really known about your family. I'm curious, what is it like? Who all are there a part of your family on a daily basis when you go back from work? So when you put a little intention behind asking that question, like, hey, it amazes me, I've known you for so long, and I realized that I've never heard about your family. So you could speak there. So when somebody answers that question, say, oh, well, yeah, my family has my parents. Please make sure that you don't say, oh, so you're not married? Very careful around that, literally very careful around that. And you wouldn't want to walk into that path. And if you notice that the person isn't talking a lot about it, then we can completely walk away from the subject. So your awareness, your emotional presence, observing how the person responds to your question, how willing are they to bring up information about themselves, is what will allow you to take that conversation to the next level. So family is one question. The second could be occupation. If you're meeting people socially at some friend's house or just interacting with people, you could always ask, so I'm curious, what do you do to make a living? Or what do you do that keeps you excited and makes you throw your blanket every day? I'm curious to know, how do you leverage your skill sets every day? So that's another way to ask. So I'm curious to know, if I saw you outside this room, what else would I see you doing? There are various set of interesting questions to ask the same simple question, what do you do for a living? And I invite you to consider that there are these alternate ways to ask the same question without making it awkward. Similarly, for recreation, it's wonderful to ask people, instead of saying, so what are your hobbies? It might be a lot more meaningful to ask, so I'm curious, what do you like to do when you're not working? Or what do you like to do to de-stress away from the usual monotony of our work? The question, therefore, then makes them go to whether they want to talk about reading, whether they want to talk about family, whether they want to talk about their travel. What is it that they love to do when they're not working? And dreams. Yes, Sukirti, you were going to say something.
Sorry, there was a question. Sorry to interrupt you. Sunena asked, is the Ford formula by Keith Ferrazzi?
I wouldn't know, but I'll have to go check. Thank you. I have read it through books, but I wouldn't know if it's from there. Thank you for checking, Sunena. Super. Very quickly sharing about dreams as well. Now, dreams is a beautiful subject where this is where you could start to form a real bond with people. If you have reached the conversation where somebody is willing to talk about their dreams, and I'm not meaning their dreams of what they dream at night, but their dreams of what they want to do in life. So if somebody is willing to talk about their vision, what excites them, where do they see themselves going. If sometimes you find it difficult to ask anything in that space, if you haven't been able to tap into their vision yet, it's very interesting to ask them, I'm curious. You've taken me through this work, and I see that you're very skilled in this area. And yet I'm curious to know, given a chance, if you could have done anything else as an alternate profession, what would that have been? When you ask somebody that question, 9 out of 10 times, it goes to a direction of, oh, I would so love to do dash. Some people speak about, oh, I would just love to research, or I would love to be in a profession that makes me travel, or I take pride in writing every now and then, or, when no one's watching, I love my artistry. And therefore, we discover that there are these dreams that people have of doing something meaningful, maybe from a recreation. And that vision they show in that moment is, wow, have you graduated to a much deeper conversation? Yes, Sukirti, you wanted to say something?
We have a couple of questions. So I will just give you all three of them. So Amita is asking, Mira, people ask irrelevant questions, and how do we tackle it? There are areas where you don't want to answer. Smita says, I feel a lot of people are low on the emotional aspect. Sometimes they ask questions and they put it across so awkwardly. So agree with you, Smita. How much do you make? Tum karti kya ho? What do you take home? Now, Manju is asking, how do you deal with people who have an intimidating attitude and look down superciliously? Yes, small talk can be tricky. Many Europeans don't like to answer family questions. And if you don't want to answer something, it can be difficult.
Absolutely. I'm so glad that these questions are coming up. And a few responses that you could fit depending on the situation. Sometimes the question baffles you so much that you're really wondering if you got what the person was trying to ask. In that case, I invite you to respond back saying, I didn't quite get your question. What is it that you're really needing from me? Or I didn't understand your question. Could you tell me what you're asking for? So rephrase. This is more like giving the other person a benefit of doubt to retrack and confirm if that's the question they wanted to ask. That's one way of handling it. The second is having the courage to say, I understand why you may be asking, and I'm not comfortable answering. Can we talk about something else? So that's your polite way of diverting from a conversation, addressing it for them and diverting. Addressing is not always answering. Addressing is managing. And we can manage that expectation by saying, I'm not comfortable with this. Can we talk about something else? So that's how I invite you to navigate through such conversations. Sometimes you could take the challenge to the next level. And when somebody asks, oh, nice watch, kitne ka liya? Is a beautiful way to respond saying, it's a gift. It just deflects any conversation from there. And you could further challenge when somebody asks you a question you're not comfortable answering, but you've got to tread that path very carefully. Is when somebody asks you something as much as, how much do you make? You could say, I'm not comfortable answering, or you could respond saying, I'm curious, why do you want to know? And usually when we respond and nothing significant comes from there. So for instance, I remember somebody asking me this, like, how much do you make? And I had quite a meaningful engagement with that person. So I was a little stumped when the person asked me this. So I turned around and said, I'm curious, why are you asking me this question? And this person said, I see a lot of potential in my daughter to do what you do today. And I was wondering if this is a path I could show to her. So I would want to take back some numbers to her. I saw some meaning and sense behind where he was coming. I still had the chance and opportunity to turn down and say and not share. But it's amazing how conversations can take a totally different direction once we learn the intention behind why people are asking what they are. I hope that helps, ladies. Thank you. Super. We have little time left, but there's a little formula I want to give to you to have more meaningful interactions. We sometimes walk into interactions that seem very cyclic. Like, oh, it's a typical pattern. They'll ask me about my family, then they'll ask me about my job, and then this, and then that, and then some opinions, and maybe some political discussion. It is so boring. We can already predict that there will be a pattern of a conversation that may happen in a particular setting. When you can anticipate that, I am offering you this situation. When you may have ever gone to an amusement park, I trust that many of you may have gone to an amusement park sometime or the other, if it's Appu Ghar or any local amusement park that you have. There was an age till which you would go around the merry-go-round, or you would go around those typical kiddie rides. And then there was this magical age when you went on a roller coaster for the first time, provided you had the courage at that moment and you went on it. Once you went on that roller coaster, wow, did it change your perspective about rides? And from that day onward, you decided, I'm not going to those kiddie rides anymore. Like, this is my league. I am going to stay in that line to get onto that ride that takes me through this huge high, makes me dip, and that makes me go. It gives me that adrenaline rush, and I want to experience that. That's the same thing that can happen in small talk. How? This is what small talk looks like usually. It's low, it's the regular, you can predict it, pretty much going this way. So as time passes, the interest levels are relatively low. X-axis is the time, Y-axis is your, the excitement and the spark in it. So there's relatively predictable conversations and they don't excite you. So introverts, ambiverts, we get impacted by these conversations. Like, I'm bored of saying the same stuff. How do we make small talk more meaningful? How do we make small talk big talk? Your big talk could look like this, where you take the conversation to a level where you can feel yourself really engaged, motivated. The other person's also in it with you. You're reaching a point of aha. And then there's a little bit of a dip. And then something else starts and a new interaction starts or a new conversation starts. And then you hit another point. This is what your big talk could look like. So yes, it's a form of small talk, but what I'm saying is it's more meaningful. The question you want answered is, how does this happen? It's simple. One thing I'd like you to remember, you could take conversations to a whole next level by following the number one principle: be curiously engaged. Curiously, as in, imagine you were reading a book and you really wanted to know the end of it. You were watching a movie and you really wanted to know, how does this turn out? Or what happened that the character is this way? Or what were the life events that caused this person to speak or interact like this? That curiosity you maintain, like a 5-year-old, so curious, not being very annoying with your questions. So be careful around that. But your curiosity is what will be the major propellant for a conversation to be so impactful. And the second thing that I'd like to share with you, it's not in the slides, but I'd like to share this with you otherwise. Your interactions one-on-one are beautifully, if you notice a pattern of, people will start a conversation by sharing facts. So facts like, hey, it's so hot today, or the traffic is so intense outside, or it took me 2 hours to get here. These are facts. Then you have the ability to take the conversation to opinions. When you speak something like, hey, how do you feel about that? Or like, hey, was that difficult for you? Or, how are you managing around it? So then people tend to share their opinions, or like, yeah, it's crazy to go through traffic like this. Like, why isn't the government doing something about this? So people pass their opinion on it. So from a fact of it took me 2 hours to now comes an opinion of, why isn't somebody doing something about it? Or why are people just not using carpool or something like that? So from a fact, you went to an opinion. And now from an opinion, depending on your questions, you have the ability to take it to a feeling, where now you ask, hey, that must be really difficult for you. I mean, it can be very challenging for you to manage everything before rush hour. So you're anticipating what the person is feeling, and then you're calling it out in conversation and inviting the person to share. The minute you touch a feeling, spark happens. I invite you to try this. You'll notice the pattern. People discuss facts. It's mundane, it's boring, it's a kiddie ride. But you take it to an opinion with your questions, and you take it to a feeling. spark happens, and then keep the dance there. When people get to talk about their feelings, their opinions, all of that is where you are now creating a meaningful connect, where people remember you from that interaction. You spoke less, they spoke more, but they remember you because you heard them so well, and that memorability got created. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Mira. So we got to ask everybody how are they feeling right now.
Yeah.
And anybody have questions for Mira? We would love to unmute some people, so that please do raise your hands so that I will waiting to try these. Samil says 10 on 10. Curious to ask you. Okay, so Nana, I'm going to unmute you. Please ask her yourself. 1 second. I'm just finding you. Great. Please do ask her yourself. Go ahead, Sunena.
Sunena, if you're speaking, we can't hear you yet.
All right, I will ask for her. Sunena, curious to ask Mira if you're a fan of Vanessa Edwards.
Oh, thank you, Sunena. You said the words. She's a wonderful person, fantastic set of books that she's written. In fact, her most recent book is called Cues. So yes, you got it right. I'm a fan of Vanessa Van Edwards.
Vidya, go ahead. I'm asking you to unmute. Go
Hey
ahead,
all.
Vidya.
First of all, I should start with thank you because of you, Sukriti and Mira, I got a job opportunity, which is my dream job.
Yay!
That's
The
awesome.
communication tips which you gave me really helped me through my interview process, and I'm really grateful. I used to follow you on LinkedIn as well, so it's a wonderful opportunity that you have created for me.
Thank you.
So my question is, I recently had a social outing, like, where I have to meet some people there. But, like, I'm kind of, shut down, completely shut down. Me and my inner voice is like, okay, Vidya, let's not do anything stupid. Let's not say anything stupid, something, which is going on my mind. So eventually I didn't participate much. So that really bugs me. So the vulnerability I have, is it good or is it normal? How I can overcome, apart from the tips which you have given, there are, which was discussed in the session. I would like to know in those moments of vulnerability, what I should do immediately.
Yeah, Vidya, I relate to you. The powerlessness you may experience when you're doubting yourself so much, worried about making the right impression, worried how the other people may perceive you, scared you might end up saying something that may not be perceived or received very well. Did I get you right, Vidya?
Yes, exactly. That is what I wanted to convey.
Yeah.
I know I have it in me. I know the conversation which is going on. I have some points to contribute there, but I couldn't, pick the voice. Someone literally said, Vidya, speak something. I know you have that conversation. Go and talk something like that. I was very much worried. And now I feel like, why didn't I miss that choice? That chance. I should have spoken something, right? It's like kind of a replay that's going on my mind. So I would request you to address on that front.
Got it. Vidya, before I give you the path to take, I'd like you to know what's happening here. Though there's a lot of science behind self-doubt, the one thing I'd like you to know what's happening here is the worry to please someone takes you to a place where we are so wanting to impress, and the more we want to impress, out completely dismisses our ability to shine. So I'm inviting you, can you carry an intention into a conversation that I'm not here to impress, instead I'm here to be impressed? When you carry that context with you in a conversation, you will naturally find yourself listening to people, not judging them, but listening to people and really understanding what happened that they said what they said. I wonder why they think what they think. So even if it's a discussion, a brainstorming session, and you may get worried about, hey, I have to share and I have to contribute, consider that you don't necessarily have to contribute something original. Instead, could you listen to somebody so that you could ask a question that could drive a bigger impact for what the person said? So if a person suggests a particular idea, how about you pause and say, I heard something from you, and I'm so curious to understand, if we were to implement this, how would this happen? Or I'm curious to understand what happened that you suggested this. Leaders often get recognized less for their points of intervention, but more of their points of question. So I'm inviting you, Vidya, to tap into your feminine energy where you're not trying to exude yourself, but you're willing to receive, and you would be willing to receive when you're willing to ask questions. Are you with me on that one, Vidya?
Vidya?
Okay, she gave me a thumbs up. Yeah, another quick thing, because you asked this, and this may be across a lot of people. Power body language is going to be your best friend. Yes, so please use that to the fullest as often as you can. When you're in an interaction, make sure your legs are uncrossed, make sure your arms are spread as comfortable, and keep your posture there in a powerful position. And the third thing, as I learned from my coach, and I practice it as consciously as I can, in moments where you're finding self-doubt creep in, when you just have this chain of thoughts running through your head, a beautiful way to break those thoughts is watch your breath. If you could just take those 2 minutes, 3 minutes to just watch your breath in that moment, your ability to listen to the outside world instead of the chatter here goes to a whole next level. So inviting you to do that. Thank you.
Go ahead, Aruna, and then Saloni. Go ahead. And Dr. Vandana has also said sometimes people don't let you speak. They love to hear their own voice. I think Vandana is also talking about me. Hi, Vandana.
What are you saying?
I'm just joking.
Yeah, you're such a beautiful listener, Sukirti. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, Vandana, we have some people who take away the limelight. My request is, if the stakes are not very high, allow it to happen. It's sometimes just fun watching people do something, and it's okay. Allow yourself to be entertained.
Aruna, go ahead.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks, Sukirti. And so no questions here, Mira. I just wanted to say this has been an amazing session. I think I've put it in my comments. But I've really taken a lot of tips, and usually, when Sukirti has these sessions, I make a lot of notes. So today I was like nonstop scribbling stuff, and that's why my question about where I can find this recording, because there were just too many notes to make. But I really appreciate all the tips that you've given. It's so relevant in the corporate world, especially your tips about the Zoom calls, etc. And I think those were like kind of spot on. A lot to learn and a lot of practice that I need to put in out there. And, last but not the least, I think there was something about this constant validation that all of us or a lot of us fall into. And I think I'm pretty much like that. I'm like looking for constant validation from people. And I think I really need to stop and do that. So I really appreciate you bringing out that point as well. So thanks a lot, Mira and Sukirti. Always thanks for sessions like this. It's really useful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Saloni, go ahead.
Very encouraging. Thank you. Yes, Saloni.
Yes. Hi, Mira. So, like you said, I'm a fellow introvert or an ambivert. And surprisingly, I have taken up a career that works with people. That's consider working people. I work in postpartum rehab. So, when I meet somebody for the first time, either through a call or through a video call, I get very flustered. And for an exam, and I get very nervous as to, how I'm going to come across, whether I'll be able to communicate effectively to this person. So just recently, I recorded the first session with permission from the participant, and I could really see that how I was coming across nervous. The person who I was talking to, she was also very scared because it's a new thing for her too. And I think the most annoying thing about the whole conversation was that I was coming across as deadpan. My voice was so deadpan. I thought I was emoting with my hands, with my gestures, and with my voice, but apparently I was not. So how can I make this better? How can I, improve this?
Beautiful, beautiful. Saloni, I'm saying it's a beautiful question, and I relate to your experience. I might be repeating when I say this. Your profession is very service oriented. Your intention is to help people rise out of a state of misery that they may be in. And when you're enabling them to rise out of that, you could sometimes carry this crown on yourself that, okay, I have to come across this person in charge. I have to come across this person who knows what she's doing. So this intense pressure that you tend to put on yourself is several times causing that deflatedness to show up. Like it's like intense. I have to show up this power, and I have to show that I'm in control, and I have to show that, I've got it all sorted. And this is where I invite you to show up your vulnerability. Inviting yourself that it's okay if I'm not sounding as pumped up. And it's okay that I may not be bringing the most highest forms of energy. And yet, before you walk into that conversation, could you be clear about, even though I may not be in my best energies, what is it that I want that other person to think? What is it that I want that other person to feel? And what is it that I want that other person to do? It's a beautiful way to do intention setting for any interaction. When you can jot down what I would like this person to think is dash. What I would like this person to feel is like dash. So feel could be secure, feel calm, feel taken care of. So it's like you're setting intention on paper. I invite you to do this work on paper. What do I want the person to think, feel, and what would this person I'd like to do? So you have a clear set of actions you would like this person to take. Some could be plotted before, some show up in conversation. If that can be created before you bring on that interaction, you would feel equipped. And if you feel equipped, deadpan is rare.
I hope so. Yeah, I think this is something that I will try, in addition to the power pose, of course.
Yes, please. That is for sure. And I would love to hear from you, Saloni. So please write in, reach out on LinkedIn. You can write to Sukirti. I'll be happy to hear how your experience was when you did Think, Feel, and Do.
Okay,
So Mira, I think lots of people are asking for that one, how to get in touch with you. So please do tell, because I get in touch with you on LinkedIn, but
Yes. Sukirti, you and I on WhatsApp. So that's
yes.
But yes, ladies and gentlemen, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's a beautiful place to connect. I'm also on Instagram. It's Mira Swarup. And you can also write to me at miraswarup.com. I am happy to put it into the chat box right now. Give me just a bit. It's Mira Swarup as the name on LinkedIn and on Instagram, and miraswarup.com as the email ID. I hope that helps.
Well, thank you, Mira. Again, an amazing, amazing, amazing session. Any closing words before we end for today?
I may be repeating myself, but thank you for asking. With this effort that we take, that, my body language needs to be right, and my choice of words needs to be right, and that effort we're putting on working on ourselves, I want to invite you to consider, people will not remember what you said. In Maya Angelou's words, people will always remember how you made them feel. And I invite you, how you show up, not with the intention to impress, but with the intention to be impressed. That means with genuine curiosity, when you show up in an interaction, it enables you to leave a very powerful experience for the other person. So I invite you into that, be powerfully curious, genuinely curious, and allow those interactions to be more meaningful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We wish you all a very happy holiday season. Have a very, very nice Holi, and we'll see you back next week.
Thank you. All the best. Bye-bye.